Cameras weren't supposed to be rolling. The upscale Washington restaurant's strict no-recording policy existed precisely to protect the privacy of political elites who frequented its exclusive dining room. Yet, somehow, a cell phone captured the exact moment that changed everything. Former Attorney General Pam Bondi had just been seated at her corner table, a quiet dinner after testifying before Congress on government transparency. The small gold cross hanging from her necklace caught the light as she thanked the server for her menu. That's when Anton Keller, the restaurant's notoriously outspoken owner and chef, approached her table. His restaurants had earned him culinary fame, but his political activism had made him a darling of the progressive elite. What he said next wasn't meant to be heard beyond those walls. "I don't serve religious extremists in my establishment," he sneered, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, pointing directly at Bondi's necklace. "Your Christian nationalism isn't welcome here." The room froze. Servers stopped mid-stride. Conversations halted. Patrons turned to witness the confrontation that was unfolding at table 12. What happened next wasn't just unexpected. It was transformative. Pam Bondi's response wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was something far more powerful. And the 17 seconds that followed would ignite a national conversation about faith, freedom, and the deepening divide in America that nobody saw coming. Anton Keller hadn't built his restaurant empire by accident. The son of European immigrants, he had transformed his culinary talent into a $40 million restaurant group stretching from D.C. to Los Angeles. His flagship location, Maison Politique, stood just 3 blocks from the capital, a strategic location that attracted the most powerful figures in Washington. The elegant dining room's velvet drapes and soft lighting created the perfect atmosphere for political deal-making away from public scrutiny. Congressmen, lobbyists, and media executives frequented the establishment, knowing their conversations would remain private and their preferences catered to without question. But Keller was more than just a successful businessman. Over the past 5 years, he had carefully cultivated his image as a progressive champion. His restaurants sourced only from farms that supported his approved causes. He donated heavily to left-wing politicians. His social media accounts regularly lambasted conservative figures with particular venom reserved for those who expressed Christian beliefs. "Religion is the opiate of the intellectually bankrupt," he had famously told Vanity Fair just 3 months earlier. Especially Christianity, which has no place in modern governance. The evening had started normally. Security had cleared the dining room before Bondi's arrival, standard procedure for high-profile guests. The maitre d' had personally escorted her to the corner table, positioned away from windows and other diners. The restaurant's staff had been briefed on her security protocols. Pam Bondi hadn't come seeking controversy. After a grueling 6-hour testimony before the Congressional Oversight Committee on Governmental Transparency, she had simply wanted a quiet dinner before flying back to Florida the next morning. She had chosen Maison Politique not for its politics but for its privacy, and because her security team had cleared it. The small gold cross around her neck wasn't a political statement. It had been her grandmother's, a family heirloom she rarely appeared without. Simple, elegant, and deeply personal, the necklace represented her private faith rather than any public crusade. Nearby diners included Senator Markson and his wife, celebrating their anniversary. 2 Supreme Court clerks discussing case precedents in hushed tones, and a well-known cable news producer meeting with a potential source. All witnessed what happened next. Keller had spotted Bondi from his office's security monitors. Without consulting his staff, he had stormed from the kitchen, still wearing his chef's coat, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. His face had flushed, deep red as he crossed the dining room with deliberate steps. When he reached Bondi's table, he didn't lower his voice. He wanted to be heard. "I don't serve religious extremists in my establishment," he said, his voice cutting through the ambient music. "Your Christian nationalism isn't welcome here." He pointed directly at her necklace, making his target unmistakable. "I'll have to ask you to remove that symbol of oppression or leave my restaurant." The sommelier froze mid-pour at the next table. A fork clattered against fine china somewhere in the suddenly silent room. Security personnel stationed near the entrance shifted, uncertain whether to intervene. Pam Bondi looked up slowly from her menu, her expression unreadable. For 2 full seconds, she simply studied Keller's face, noting the cameras on the ceiling, the watching eyes of other patrons, the staff holding their collective breath. She placed her napkin on the table, folded her hands carefully, and prepared to respond to a confrontation she never sought but now couldn't avoid. Nobody could have predicted what she would say next, or how it would change the national conversation about faith in America. The dining room remained frozen in tense silence. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to witness the confrontation, standing in the doorway with wide eyes. Anton Keller loomed over Bondi's table, his chest heaving slightly with self-righteous indignation, clearly expecting her to either comply or erupt in anger. He got neither. Pam Bondi maintained perfect composure. She didn't raise her voice or slouch defensively. Instead, she straightened almost imperceptibly in her chair and looked Keller directly in the eyes. "Mr. Keller," she began, her voice calm but carrying easily through the silent restaurant. "First, let me thank you for making your position so clear." Her unexpected politeness seemed to catch him off guard. "This cross," she continued, lightly touching the small gold pendant, "belonged to my grandmother, who wore it while serving as a nurse in World War II. She treated wounded soldiers regardless of their faith or background, because she believed every human being deserves dignity and respect." Bondi's voice remained measured and clear. "She passed it to me on her deathbed and asked me to remember that faith, at its best, calls us to love others, even those who may not share our beliefs." Keller's expression flickered with uncertainty. This wasn't the confrontation he had anticipated. A few diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some avoiding eye contact with the restaurant owner, others unable to look away from the unfolding scene. "I wear this cross as a private expression of my faith," Bondi continued, "not as a political statement, and certainly not as a symbol of extremism, just as I would respect your right to wear symbols meaningful to your traditions, if you had any." That last phrase, delivered without sarcasm but with unmistakable clarity, caused several diners to inhale sharply. A server near the back dropped a napkin, bending quickly to retrieve it, perhaps to hide a reaction. "Now, regarding your establishment," Bondi said, glancing briefly around the restaurant. "I selected it tonight not because of your politics, which I'm well aware differ significantly from mine, but because my team considered it secure and discreet." She gestured slightly toward the security personnel near the entrance. "I never expected special treatment, Mr. Keller, just the same professional courtesy you extend to the many public officials who dine here regularly, many of whom, I note, don't share my faith but receive your welcome nonetheless." The observation hung in the air, its implication clear. Keller's selective intolerance was now on display for everyone to witness. If you're finding this confrontation as compelling as we are, hit that like button right now and subscribe to our channel for more content that examines these crucial cultural moments. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. A murmur rippled through the dining room. At a nearby table, Senator Markson, a well-known progressive, shifted uncomfortably, his anniversary dinner now overshadowed by the unfolding drama. Keller's face had transitioned from righteous anger to something more complicated, a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. But before he could respond, Bondi continued, her voice taking on a more reflective tone. You know, it's interesting to me that the same progressive values that once championed tolerance and inclusion now seem to permit such public hostility toward people of faith. She maintained steady eye contact with Keller, speaking not just to him but to everyone listening.